The social impact of these technologies is further influenced by the legislation of different nations. The first attempt at using legislation to prevent the previously described complications is GINA, or the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. A federal law passed by the United States in 2008, this act mainly works to prevent discrimination on the basis of information provided by gene sequencing. With respect to insurance companies, it states that health plans cannot deny coverage to a healthy person or charge them higher premiums based on any predispositions they have to developing a disease. In regards to employment, employers are not allowed to use individuals' genetic makeup to make decisions regarding job placement, promotion, hiring, or termination. While this act does represent a step forward for civil rights in the 21st century, there are many other issues that remain unsolved. For instance, GINA may not cover smaller companies that have less than 15 employees. Some say that even GINA does not adequately cover its targeted issues, and might only serve to increase frivolous lawsuits and force health plans to cover all treatments for genetic conditions. Conversely, the European Union currently has no central legislation to prevent genetic discrimination at any level. All legislation is done at the national level, with some countries providing more protection than others. The UK and Belgium are among the least restrictive nations in terms of genome availability, only lightly interfering in corporate rights to use genomes for their employment and insurance decisions. After a series of genetic discrimination cases in the US, the UK began to develop further legislation to protect individuals, such as the 2010 Equality Act. This act specifically states that employers and insurance companies are not allowed to mandate genetic testing for employees or clients. These nations are seen as similar to the US in terms of that level of restriction. Other European nations, such as Germany, France, Portugal, and Switzerland, take it even more seriously, with most banning the availability of a direct-to-customer gene sequencing service. In contrast to the nations previously mentioned, Australia protects clients and potential employees against genetic discrimination, but most legislative committees do not recommend the development of legislation concerning insurance. This is due to the fact that the national health system in Australia is not risk-rated. Overall, it is being recommended that legislation be developed to govern discrimination by employers as the technology becomes less expensive and more reliable. Both the Australian Law Reform Commission and the Australian Health Ethics Committee have been asked to perform inquiries into the protection of genetic information for possible consideration in future legislation. However, Japan currently has no framework for any legislation regarding genomics. They've had few recorded social or business problems related to it, and have no plans to interfere in the ability of employers and insurance agencies to access the genomes of potential employees or clients. Although China invests money in gene sequencing, there is very little application of the technology to public health care. As a result, China has no legislation concerning genomics, but rare occurrences of genetic discrimination in employment do exist. One such case is that of 3 civil servant candidates who sued a government agency for allegedly discriminating against them during the hiring process due to the fact that they carry a gene predisposing them to thalassemia, a blood disease. The local court ruled in favor of the employer, supporting the practice of employers including genetic testing in their selecting criteria. In the case of developing countries, problems such as poverty, poor health care, and illiteracy greatly decrease the interest in gene sequencing technologies and their social impacts.